All right, folks, welcome back. You got the Chris Salcedo Show. Our telephone number is 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. I want to continue the conversations we've been having this morning, folks, on the program with a longtime friend of the program and somebody who's been in Congress and been in the Texas State House, has been a conservative fighter. And his name is Congressman Pat Fallon. There he is on your screen right now, folks. And I got to say, the Congressman and I have been friends for going on a decade now. He represents the 4th Congressional District in the great state of Texas, a veteran of the United States Air Force. Congressman, welcome back.
Hey, Chris, good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you, sir. Let's talk about first, because we just were talking about what's happening over in Iran. And look, some of the callers believe it's another George Bush special, 20-year war where we're going to be with trillions of dollars of treasure, and we're just going to end up handing it right back to the people that we liberated it from. I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing it more of a Venezuela-esque type operation. How are you seeing it?
No, I think that's the case, Chris. That's something that President Trump ran on, and he was a large critic. It was a big critic of the Iraq war in 2003 and moving forward. So I think we've learned lessons. We burned 4,000 billion of American taxpayer money, and as Churchill would say, the thankless deserts of Iraq and in Afghanistan. You just can't nation build like that. It doesn't work. In Venezuela, is Venezuela perfect? No. Is Venezuela still a disaster in many ways? Yes. But is Venezuela openly hostile to the United States and our interests any longer? No. That's very important. As Henry Kissinger said famously, nations don't have friends, nations have interests. And when we took Venezuela off the board, that really damaged China, it damaged Russia, it damaged Iran, and it has devastated Cuba. And we can talk about that maybe another time. But with Iran, the regime has been decapitated. And let's be clear, there are challenges that remain. There's 100,000 plus Islamic Revolutionary Guard, and it's kind of an army within an army, really outside the army, that reported directly to the supreme leader. These are true believers. They are still intact. You got to kill those sons of bitches. And there's certain different ways that I'm sure is planned to do in order for the Iranian people to take back their country. But it's going to be up to the Iranian people at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you see the United States enabling the Kurds to march in there. It's going to be individuals who are going to be putting max pressure on that regime. Americans are providing support, and it's in our interest. The Israelis are providing support, and the Arab states.
Yes.
The idea that it's only Israel and America operating here. No, the Arab states, the United States, Israel, the Kurds. I mean, all forces in the Middle East are being brought to bear to rid themselves of a neighbor that has been a destabilizing force for the last half century. Right,
Chris, when you take out nearly 50 people that are at the extreme elite top of an authoritarian regime, you're going to have power vacuums. You're going to have a command and control issue, and then to start lobbying ordinance and getting kinetic against their Gulf neighbors. You could argue that maybe they were trying to do that to intimidate the population, much like Hitler did when he bombed civilians in Britain. How'd that work out for him? He didn't create fear. He fabricated resolve, and then the British people were like, we're not having this. We're going to go after this guy. I think similarly that's happening in the Gulf states. So, but here's another thing a lot of Americans may not know. Before this all went down the last, say, 5 years, 70% of the Iranian people hated this regime. They loathed them. But when you have 30% of the population that is sympathetic to the regime and they have all the weapons, you can remain in control. But over the last few years, that's grown to about 80%. So it is a tinderbox, and we have to light the match. The match's been lit. Now it's up to the Iranian people, as I mentioned before, to continue to light that fuse.
Congressman Pat Fallon, our guest right now, folks, 4th Congressional District here in the great state of Texas, won his primary handily because he's doing a great job up on the Hill. Let's bring things back home. Let's talk about the SAVE Act, because there was a report earlier in the week that House Republicans, and I confirm this, they're having conversations with the Speaker saying, look, what Leader Thune is doing arrogantly and stupidly is he's putting all of our jobs on the line because voters are not going to go to the ballot box and say, well, it's Thune, it's McConnell, it's Curtis, it's Tillis, it's Murkowski. They're going to go to the ballot box and say it's Republicans who are denying and stopping the SAVE Act and can't get the SAVE Act over the finish line. Uh, and so my understanding is that House conservatives are saying we ought to go to war with the do nothing, pro Democrat, pro leftist, pro Marxist Republican Senate. Um, and I confirmed those conversations were taking place. Now, the Daily Caller is reporting today that Republicans in the House are backing off. They're surrendering to the almighty John Thune, who is saying, you will all lose your jobs and you will like it. What do you say?
I say that we have to show the Republican base, the conservative, I should say more so the conservative base, that we're actually we can perform and we can get things done. The House has done that. The House passed the SAVE Act. So the Senate, what we're talking about is, can the Senate have a talking filibuster? And I believe they can. And I think everything is at stake here because if we can have safe, honest, fair, open, transparent elections, we save our valued and treasured republic. If we continue to let Democrats manipulate the electoral process, we're going to lose our country. Sometimes, Chris, you win close elections. Sometimes you lose close elections. But as long as you can believe in the result that it was fair, you can live with it and you can move forward. The fact that when Democrats say take control of certain states, I think California comes to mind, Oregon, states like that, what are the first thing they do? They get rid of in person voting. They don't just create an option where you can register online and you can mail in your ballot. They say you can't even go in and vote in person. And I always argue, and people laugh, and particularly we win the independents on this thing. This is like more of a 70-30, 80-20 issue. When you ask them, if you won the lottery and you have $100 million lottery ticket in your hand, there's two ways to redeem it. You can mail it in, or you can walk it into the lottery office.
Right.
How many people gonna mail that in? Nobody. Zero people ever in history. You're gonna walk it in. Why? Because it's more secure. Because you know that you have this ticket and it's gonna matter. You don't put it in somebody else's hands. So why in the hell do we do that with elections? And we have to pass the SAVE Act, really at all costs. And all we're doing is promoting fairness. We're not trying to put our thumb on the damn scale.
I know.
That's what they've
I
been
know.
doing.
On the Chris Salcedo X page, there was an individual who ran a race in the recent primaries, and he was demonstrating how as more of the vote total came in, his vote totals, the number of people that voted for him, were adjusting up and down. So the greater percentage of the vote that came in, he actually lost votes. He actually lost votes, which is not the way it's supposed to work. You've got these machines that are subtracting votes from individuals in real time, and you can actually watch it. He screen captured his race and said, wait a minute, I'll just use an example. I had
Sure.
1,000 votes with 5% of the vote in. Then I got 10% of the vote in, and I had 900 votes. How the hell does that happen? He's asking. And
It's bizarre.
yeah,
I can't speak to that obviously specifically, but I'll tell you
no, I
something, Chris.
know, but
Uh,
I'm just giving you an
no, I
example.
know.
What's
Let me
out there.
let me share this one with you. When I was in the state house, I was on the elections committee, and in 2013, we had a young man come in, a sharp kid, Hispanic kid from the border, and he had run for school board.
Mhm.
Okay, he won early voting in person, and he won election day in person, kind of handily by 20 points. And he ended up losing the race because he lost the mail-ins 80-20, and they were very significant, which mail-ins typically are not ever. You ask any statistician, is that remotely possible
Possible.
in a fair, honest, and open election? Of
No.
course not. And so many in Texas, oddly enough, most of the results that are manipulated are in those quote unquote nonpartisan races in school board and city councils because I think they're smaller and you can really, when you put your thumb on the scale, you can affect it greater. And because then, if you are corrupt, what's the next best thing? You have your cousin or your lackeys on a city council or a school board, and then you're going to get those contracts, and nobody's going to be the wiser. So these things are happening. It's all happening all over the country, and the Democrats just are ostriches. They got their head in the sand.
True. Well, it's not just the Democrats. Pat Fallon is our guest right now, folks, on the Chris Salcedo Show, 4th Congressional District in the great state of Texas. So let me ask you to put your politics hat on because as I alluded to off the top, John Thune, Mitch McConnell, John Curtis, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis. They don't give a damn whether you win re-election. They don't give a damn whether any Republicans in the House. As a matter of fact, they seem to be hell bent on making sure that they hand over the United States Congress to Democrats to thwart the last 2 years of the Trump administration, the America First administration, and so that they can get back to corruption as usual with their good Democrat friends. What's missing, in my view, and you tell me where I'm going wrong,
Sure.
is other Republicans who may lose because of the antics of the Senate, um, calling these senators out by name the way I have and bringing max political pressure on the United States Senate the way I try to do and other conservative voices try to do. Why is it that Republicans who are being disadvantaged by John Thune and his antics are so comfortable with letting him screw you over? Why are so many Republicans comfortable with that?
Some of the folks that aren't going to run again, I don't care. I think that if they're not up for reelection, we can scream until the cows come home, and they're just going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Some of the Senate, we're in the same. I joke sometimes we're in the same building, but we're on different continents, right? The House and the Senate just operate differently. We act differently. I've physically been in the Senate once in 5.5 years because we're just busy with our thing. Some of the senators, I suppose, I'm just speculating here. They value their institution and the filibuster and all that, but we're not talking about blowing up the filibuster because that can come back to bite us when you're going to talk about D.C. and Puerto Rico as states if there was no filibuster because under Joe Biden that would have happened. They passed all that stuff in the House and they would have manipulated federal elections with they had it was HR 1 and HR 4, all sorts of crazy things in there. They would have literally gotten that done. So I understand that there's got to be a guardrail, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about a walking filibuster, which is fundamentally different. And
Yes.
for what? For one thing, to just make sure our elections are honest, open, transparent, and fair.
Our founding fathers did it that way. What?
Mhm.
Why? Now look, there's also this angle. There are a lot of people who have been speaking to staffers on the Hill who say that the Senate is a nursing home for failed politicians, and they don't want to work. If they can if they can show that really this artificial 60 vote threshold is just that. The founding fathers never envisioned that
Mhm.
the only thing the Senate would do is show up and overspend by trillions of dollars and then go campaign for and then go to cocktail parties, that's all, and approve judges, that was the Senate's only job. The founding fathers didn't envision that. So they said, look, if you're going to, the Senate can work, but there are those who believe what John Thune is protecting is lazy, fat, old senators who prize their cocktail parties more than they do the survivability of this country. And again, I ask you, why are so many other elected Republicans not calling that out by name and bringing max political pressure? Why?
Chris, to answer your question directly, you'd have to ask them. I don't know. What's in someone else's heart and what's on their mind. And something else to consider too. Just the Senate's got a weird and different history. It's only been 100 years where senators have been elected directly by the people. They used
Yeah.
to be chosen by the state legislatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
true.
it is fundamentally a different, and it's a different club. And I joke that they put on their powdered wigs and speak with British accents. And if a House member were to go in there, they say, "Oh, has he been checked for lice?" That kind of thing. I love the House because we are up for election every 2 years. We're the gritty ones that have the in-person town halls. We have the spirited exchanges of ideas. For me, I get into sometimes shouting matches with crazy wokies that try to hijack the meetings. I mean, that's what we're here to reflect. We're the lowest level of the federal government. We're here to reflect the will of the people. Whereas the senators, it's very expensive, right, to get into the Texas or to get into any Senate race. They're
Yeah.
usually big states. So you're talking that super PAC money comes into hand. You just can't knock enough doors in a state, even as small as
Well,
Delaware,
yeah.
to get in
I,
there. And so you're just relying on different factors.
I guess that the broader issue I have is so many in the House are willing to sit there and take whatever Thune dishes out, even if it means them losing their own races, and they won't. And this goes right back to where we started the conversation. They won't, even though they're talking with Speaker Johnson on the down low, they won't go out in public and say John Thune is wrong. Mitch McConnell is working to preserve the
Hmm.
Democrats' ability to cheat the ballot box. They won't call out these other Republicans by name, and I don't understand that cult. I'm a conservative. I'm not a
Sure.
Republican. I'm a conservative. So I don't understand what prevents other elected officials who are being disadvantaged by these shrubs in the Senate from coming out and saying they're shrubs and
Yeah.
America should be opposing these guys. Tell me, what is it? Money? Is it that is John Thune threatening to come after you with his big PAC money and
No,
destroy
I
your
don't. And
election?
you know what? I think
What
any,
here's the question. What
yeah.
keeps every other Republican silent from criticizing these shrubs in the Senate?
I know that there's many conservatives in the House, and if the Senate were to threaten that, they're not going to beat us because we know our constituents better than they do. They can make our lives more difficult.
It's
They
true.
can make our. They say I was fortunate enough and humble. I'm humbled by the result of winning with about 81, 82% of the vote. That if they come after me, I'm not going to get 80% of the vote anymore, but I'm still going to get a majority of the vote.
Yeah.
So you want to play that game? That's going to come back and bite you in the backside. I think that like moving forward, what I'd like to see, because I think this is realistic, right? I want to live in but politics is the art of the possible, is to get the White House and the Speaker to talk to Thune and privately and say, look, we need to have this happen. Now it may still fail, even if Thune goes for it, because he's going to have to hold all of the 53. He's got to have 50. He might lose four, and trying to do a walking filibuster. That could happen, but then it's not on him. Then he can say,
Yeah.
"Hey, we used every power," and that could still happen. We've got some time, but time, it's time to act. There's no
Well,
reason to wait a month or two.
2026 is the
Well, I know
November
we got to get
is
her
right
done
around the corner.
now. Yeah.
Last thing I want to ask you about Congressman Pat Fallon, our guest right now. President of the United States, speaking of the president, came out and, as you know, we have a very hotly contested Senate primary in the
Mhm.
state of Texas. The president come out and said, "I'm going to endorse either Ken Paxton or the Rhino, John Cornyn, a man, as you know, who said that President Trump couldn't win, a man who said that
Mhm.
President Trump was an albatross around the Republican Party's neck." So, but president is saying, "I may endorse this guy who is a never Trumper." Uh, a lot of people are taking offense, and we've heard from some of them as
Mhm.
callers this morning that the president would demand that the person he doesn't endorse drop out of the race. What is your take on that? As somebody who stands for election, if a president or somebody had demanded you drop out of your own race in a hot league, how would you process that?
Well, anyone has the right to free speech, and you can say whatever you'd like. And that person, that other candidate, may acquiesce, and they may not. That's up to them. Think the concern is, again, talking real politics, because you know what? And on the Chris Salcedo show, we are frank. We're go beyond honesty, brother. We talk
Yes.
frank. We talk with candor. What is this all about at the end of the day? This is about making sure we win in November. And this is the argument, right? Ken, who's a dear friend of mine, Ken saying, I'm the firebrand that's going to reflect your values. And for a quarter of a century, John Cornyn has ignored you because he grew up in the Bush era and they just do this differently. Ken would say he's in DC a lot. He doesn't come home. He doesn't put his pulse on the heart of Texas, et cetera. And then Cornyn's argument's going to be, hey, I win in general elections. I'm the better general election candidate. Tallarico is going to run. We all know let me tell you how John Tallarico is going to run his race. What's his first name? Is it John?
No,
What is
James
it?
Tellerico.
James. Yeah. See, I don't even care. It should be woke Tallarico. Okay. It
Well,
should
yeah.
be,
And remember,
yeah.
he's a white fake Christian. We could just call him the
Right.
white fake Christian. Yeah.
All right. So Wokey, little Wokey beta soy boy. Well, how about soy boy? Soy boy Tellerico. All right. Is going to sit there and tell you, me, and everyone else in Texas how he probably loves guns. And he's had a gun for years. He's going to affect a little bit of a Southern accent and all that.
Uh
He's
huh.
going to run as the moderate. I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I'm for America. And I love Jesus. And you know what? Did I tell you about Jesus? And here's my friend Jesus. And he's got a vowel at the end of his name, so probably I don't know what ethnicity he is, but he's gonna be like the Beto type thing. And hey, maybe I'm Hispanic, maybe I'm not. Hey, what's up, Holmes? That kind
Bada
of thing.
bing, bada boom. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what are you gonna do? Okay, how you doing, Chris Salcedo? All right, he fell off a truck. So then he's gonna But we know what's going to happen if
Yeah.
he, God forbid, were to win. He's going to have the same voting record as Elizabeth Warren. He's a woke phony. I served with him in the Texas legislature. I knew who he was. He was an ambitious soy boy. And now his dream has come true. He's going to be the belle of the ball for the liberals for the next 6, 7 months.
Mhm.
And they're going to do everything they can to have him win. So the danger and fear, I'm not saying this is real, but it's a perception, right? That he's going to get those right in the middle or just barely Republicans because he's going to come across. He fooled Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan thought he was wonderful and he was full of, you know what? Can we cuss on this or no? Is this?
No,
Yeah.
this is
Okay.
okay. Yeah, we can't
Yeah.
cuss.
He's full of bunk, right?
Punk. Yes.
Yeah. He's full of bunk. And so that's just the danger. Now, I haven't seen any
And
concrete polling.
let's remember, James Tallarico is the caliber of individual that John Cornyn strokes his chin thoughtfully and says, "I want to work with that guy."
Yeah.
It's
The
the
soy boys.
Yeah, the soy boys. Remember, John Cornyn's favorite dance partner in the House was not a Republican, but a Democrat. Her name was Jasmine Crockett. Let's not forget that John Cornyn and the National Republican Senatorial Committee spent over $100 million to defeat conservatives, not
Mm.
Democrats. And that's the big issue. And that's why every conservative can confidently look at the NRSC, can look at John Cornyn and say, "You're not for us. You're for the Democrats."
Well,
And
yeah, I
frankly,
think that
that's
on
the
that
leadership
side,
of the Senate. Yeah.
on that side of the ledger, if Team Cornyn's trying to, I haven't, I've yet to see convincing concrete polling that even backs up the argument, right?
No.
It is will now he does traditionally win by about 10 points. And if it would be compelling to many if they can show that kind of scientific polling that you could believe in to point to that, because then you're in a conundrum, right? Do you go with the person that better reflects your values that may not be the strongest candidate in November, or do you go with the strongest candidate in November, but that may not be your cup of tea? And the argument I think that Corning Camp's making now is, well, we got more votes in the first round than Ken, which was a surprise to all of us because the polling
Yeah.
didn't reflect
Well,
that.
there's still 5% outstanding, and I
Yeah,
think there's a reason why there's outstanding. And look, we gotta wrap this up, but I will say this, that the conservative base is not inspired at all by John Cornyn. There's going to be a significant number who will not show up for John Cornyn because they look at John Cornyn as just Tallarico and John Cornyn. There's no difference between them other than what they call themselves. So I think the biggest danger is the Republicans putting up an individual who inspires nobody. Ken Paxton has a track record, as you and I both know, of defending me and mine and you and yours, and John Cornyn can't make that claim credibly. Um,
I would beg those people, Chris, to join me and never soy boy Tellerico
yeah,
ever.
yep. Well, I don't think anybody's going to vote for Tallarico, but John Cornyn John Cornyn will inspire conservatives not to show up and vote for him. They'll vote for everybody else on the ticket, but every other conservative, like yourself, who has done good for our people, but not John Cornyn. I think Texas is done with again our very own soy boy, John Cornyn. Pat Fallon, everybody, District 4, Congressional District 4 in the great state of Texas, winning handily in his reelection because he does have a set of values that he does put into practice. Sir, appreciate the time as always.
Thanks, Chris. God bless. Take care.